Welcome to the Inner Fortress. In this video, we are revealing the secrets of the architecture of isolation, how narcissistic homes breed perfect targets, evolution from domestic war zones to toxic networks, the psychology of the vulnerability vortex, and the dark psychology of systematic exploitation. Why high achievers fade into silence. Psychological vulnerability is rarely an accident. It is often meticulously engineered years before a victim ever encounters their first predator. In homes governed by a narcissistic, abusive parent, extreme isolation is the primary tool of control. When a child is strictly prohibited from socializing, locked away without explanation, it is not an act of protection. It is an act of ownership. Growing up in an environment poisoned by domestic violence and rigid financial control alters the developing brain. To survive a volatile home, a child must normalize chaos, suppress their own boundaries, and become hypervigilant. Because having personal boundaries is dangerous under an abuser. The child learns that love must be earned through total compliance and self-sacrifice. Tragically, this domestic prison strips them of a vital survival mechanism, a natural social radar. By starving the child of peer interaction, the abuser inadvertently guarantees they step into adulthood completely blind to human malice. When this isolated individual finally enters the world, their survival mechanism manifests as high intelligence, deep empathy, and stellar achievements. They become a brilliant light. But in the world of dark psychology, a brilliant light without a defensive shield becomes a beacon for predatory networks. Because they are starved for the genuine safety and moral support they never received at home, they look for connection with deep, innocent intensity. A sophisticated manipulator instantly recognizes this specific psychological profile: highly intelligent, deeply creative, yet starved for validation and completely unprotected. They read the childhood blueprint of trauma and realize this target will tolerate mistreatment because they have been conditioned to survive it since birth. What follows is a dark psychological phenomenon known as proxy grooming, or the chain of custody betrayal. An initial childhood acquaintance, someone the target blindly trusts, due to nostalgia scouts the vulnerability. Instead of protecting them, they willingly redirect the target toward a secondary predator. The target, operating under the trauma-induced hunger for a savior, pours their entire soul into the relationship. They paint pictures, weave gifts, and offer deep intellectual and spiritual devotion, believing they have found an anchor. But the network operates like a pack. Once the secondary predator extracts physical and emotional utility, they initiate a brutal ghosting and gaslighting campaign, leaving the target's mental health in ruins. The target is then systematically handed off down a line of peripheral opportunists, serial liars, and old acquaintances waiting for their moment to strike. The ultimate blow comes when the target realizes the entire local ecosystem was complicit. The shock of discovering systematic exploitation triggers a severe trauma response, immediate psychological paralysis. The mind freezes for months, buried under the crushing weight of collective shame and confusion. But the psychology of survival dictates that the chain ends the moment the architecture of the trap is understood. To break a multi-layered network betrayal, 3 psychological shifts must occur. Recognize the original blueprint, accept that your childhood isolation made you a target, but your empathy and light made you a prize. They targeted your goodness because their own internal structures were completely bankrupt. Deprive the network of energy when forced to look at your past or your abusers. Practice radical indifference. No anger, no acknowledgement. A total emotional vacuum strips a manipulator of their perceived power. Enforce absolute severance. True healing requires walking away from the entire geographical and social ecosystem that permits the abuse. Just as cutting ties with a narcissistic parent is necessary to survive, cutting ties with a toxic community is mandatory to rebuild. They took your innocence, but they could not take your capacity to rise. Your survival is not just a recovery. It is the ultimate act of defiance against everyone who tried to break you. In the next video, we will discover how the victim operates affected by all this generational abuse. So till then, stay tuned, protected, and blessed.